Hey everyone! Today we're diving into India's really bold economic strategy. So, based on Deloitte's latest outlook, we're going to break down how the country isn't just trying to survive all this global turbulence, but is actually planning to thrive right through 2026. And that's the big question, right? In a year when global markets were, let's be honest, pretty shaky, India pulled off some incredible growth. So, how on earth did they do it? And, more importantly, can they keep it up? Let's dig in. All right, so our story really kicks off in 2025, and this was a year that was, well, anything but smooth sailing for the global economy. We saw these major policy shifts in the West that just sent shockwaves across pretty much every major market out there. Now, India is so intertwined with the global economy, it was never going to be immune to this. It had to face these external shocks head on. We're talking new tariffs on its goods, unpredictable money just flying in and out of its markets, and all of this really put the squeeze on the entire economic system. So, faced with this massive global storm, what was India's game plan? Well, it didn't just sit back and brace for impact. No, it activated this strategic defense, something we're calling its domestic shield. It was a really deliberate pivot to look inward. And this whole playbook was built on three core pillars. Let's call them the 3 Rs. First, building resilience in its own economy. Second, pushing through some really decisive reforms. And third, making smart recalibrations to its policies. This was the core of their entire defense strategy. Okay, so let's dive into that first R, resilience. Now, India has this incredible advantage that honestly very few other countries can match, a massive, young, and increasingly aspirational domestic market. We're talking over 1 billion people. So the strategy was simple and clear. If the rest of the world isn't buying, get your own population spending. And the results of this strategy? Well, they were absolutely stunning. In the second quarter alone, India's GDP expanded by a staggering 8.2% year over year. I mean, think about that for a second. That kind of growth is just incredible, especially when most of the world was slowing way down. So, what was fueling that powerful growth engine? Simple. People. Private consumption, that's you and me buying stuff, it surged by 7.9%. As incomes went up and inflation started to ease, people felt more confident spending on everything from daily essentials to, bigger ticket items. And here's the thing, it wasn't just about spending money, it was about making things. The manufacturing sector's gross value added, which is basically a measure of how much stuff the sector is actually producing, grew by a super robust 9.1%. It just shows the industrial heart of the economy was really beating strong. But look, a domestic boom like this doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It was seriously supercharged by that second R in the playbook, a whole series of decisive policy reforms that were really designed to kick the economy into a higher gear. The government's strategy here was crystal clear. They saw that the middle class was getting squeezed by high costs. So, what did they do? They brought in these long-awaited tax exemptions and they simplified the goods and services tax, the GST. The goal was dead simple. Put more money back into people's pockets because then they'll go out and spend it.
And these bold moves, they definitely did not go unnoticed. In what was a huge vote of confidence, the rating agency S&P upgraded India's sovereign rating. And get this, for the first time in nearly 2 decades. This basically sent a massive signal to the world that, hey, India's economic management is absolutely on the right track.
But of course, the story doesn't end there. After all those successes in 2025, a whole new set of challenges is starting to pop up for 2026. And the path ahead means navigating some pretty significant risks. So right now, India is performing this incredible balancing act. On one side, you've got these global threats, things like unpredictable U.S. trade policy and supply chains getting all messed up. But on the other side, you've got domestic worries, like stubborn credit growth and that ever-present risk of inflation flaring up again. And if you want a perfect example of that global volatility, just look at this number, 18.4 billion US dollars. That is the staggering net amount of money that foreign investors pulled out of India in 2025. And just to put that number in perspective for you, this was the highest amount of capital to leave India in a decade and a half. This kind of capital flight, it creates a ton of instability, and it's a major vulnerability for any economy, no matter how strong. And all that pressure, it had a direct impact on the currency. The Indian rupee weakened, and it crossed that big psychological barrier of 90 per US dollar. That makes anything imported more expensive and just adds to the overall economic uncertainty. So what's next? To build on all its success and to counter these new risks, India is now getting ready for its next big strategic shift. It's moving from a strategy of playing defense to one focused on building for the future. The focus is now shifting to what economists call supply-side improvements. Okay, so think of it like this. Instead of just giving people money to buy things, you make it easier and cheaper for companies to make those things in the first place. The whole goal is to lower costs, boost productivity, and really unlock that long-term growth potential. And get this, the engine for this next phase of growth won't just be the big metro cities like Delhi or Mumbai. The strategy is to empower what are called micro, small, and medium enterprises, the MSMEs, and to unlock the absolutely massive untapped potential of India's smaller Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. So, how are they going to do it? Well, the plan is ambitious, and it's really all about building infrastructure and creating access. The upcoming budget is expected to focus on some really concrete steps, building these huge industrial corridors to connect production hubs, investing a ton in urban connectivity for those smaller cities, and this is crucial, making it way easier for small businesses to get loans and adopt modern digital tools like AI.
So, looking ahead, Deloitte's optimistic forecast sees growth staying very, very strong, potentially hitting 7.8% in the current fiscal year. Now, it is expected to slow down just a little bit to a still very robust 6.9% next year, as the global economy, continues to find its footing.
And that brings us to the final and I think most critical question. India's strategy of building this powerful domestic engine is clear. But in the kind of interconnected world we live in today, can any country really, truly insulate itself from the next global storm? That, I think, remains the ultimate test. Thanks for sticking with us for this breakdown.